Hello and welcome back to my channel. It's been a long time. In fact, it was December the last time I uploaded a video on the tarot, but as promised, this one has finally arrived and it's on the Lenormand cards, and we'll see how this goes. It's probably the most difficult one I've had to do because, one, I'm not an expert and I don't profess to be at all. I'm still very much a newbie and I'm learning, and secondly, the reading I'm going to describe is quite personal and I have to be a little bit careful the way I give this reading. But I'm hoping this will give people some confidence and allow people to have a go and see how they get on with Lenormand cards. And first of all, it's the pronunciation of the name Lenormand. I'm going with what I believe is how Germans would pronounce the name Lenormand, which I think is probably closer to how we would say in British English. I've heard Americans give it a different emphasis, and of course in French, again, it would be pronounced differently because it's based on the ideas of Mademoiselle Lenormand. I think that's roughly how you'd pronounce it in French, but please excuse me if it's not totally accurate. So I'm going to say Lenormand. That's how I would say it in English, and that's how I believe Germans say it. And actually the cards themselves are German, they're not French. Mademoiselle Lenormand never used these cards because they weren't even around. She probably used ordinary playing cards and possibly Tarot de Marseille, although we're not totally sure on that. This book does give a little bit of background. It's a marvellous book which I have reviewed before. Gives a little bit of detail about it with a couple of pictures and examples of early Lenormand cards and the possible evidence of her using Tarot de Marseille with what we believe is her handwriting. But put that to one side for now. I'm not going to concern myself too much with the details of the history and so on. We need to get down to the nitty-gritty, and besides, I don't really know enough. I'm not sure anybody does, because most of her writings were destroyed after her death. She probably, as we say, she was probably clairvoyant and mainly using playing cards during the time of the French Revolution, and she was probably in the right place at the right time and had the character to capture the imagination of important people, which is very fortunate for her. So why Lenormand? There's a bit of background story to this. Initially, I had the Anna-K tarot cards, and these were extremely popular about 10 years ago or so, and for many forums it was voted the best tarot deck in the world for a couple of years by many people. And I got into correspondence with Anna, who created the cards. She started them when she was about 13 and finished them in her late teens. And her life path and progress is very similar to mine, but in a different country and as a female. But the things she studied and her subjects at university and so on are very similar, and interest in illustration. And then I found out she was about to release a Lenormand deck, and I followed this and I got into correspondence with her, and she was incredibly generous with her time and her knowledge, and passed on many things which I still hold quite dearly now. She's obviously a very wise woman and very talented. So when the Lenormand cards came out, I immediately ordered them directly from Anna, and I was first of all impressed with the changes in her illustration style and the materials she was using, obviously rather better than the Anna-K artist materials. It's a bit finer, and obviously a sign of a more mature woman, although the Anna-K itself is a great deck for a teenager. It's quite remarkable, really. So it seemed natural to try this one, and it doesn't follow traditional lines. For instance, if we look at let's choose this card, for instance. Now in the bottom here we've got traditional playing card symbols and a number. In the older decks they're more prominent. She's underplayed that and gone more for the images, which are really, really evocative and great sense of perspective. The pictures draw you in nicely with their depth. But again, I'm not going to review the deck or anything like that. I just really want to talk about how to use it. Now, it's thought that in the past, when these came out in the 1800s, they were perhaps a game. So you'd play perhaps with, we don't know how it was played, it's just a guess. You'd put maybe tokens on different cards and you'd lay them all out like this in what we now call a grand tableau, where you read all the cards at the same time, but it may originate from the game which used all the cards and you had a dice and you rolled them and you moved them around. And it was perhaps kind of a game of life of some sort. We don't really know, but I can well imagine that's how it would work. And then different spreads were devised. I never use this because this is just too complex for me anyway. I'm not that stage. And her tarot deck comes with a wonderful guidebook. She writes so well, considering she's translating from German. It gives you meanings for each card, broken down into different attributes, nouns, phrases, activities, attributes, a person, as advised, as a time factor, and then how to read them, getting more and more complex as you go along. Small tableaus, grand tableau, strings. And it's the string which is about the stage I'm at, not the one card draw. I'm not a big fan of one card draws anyway. And I thought I would go for the 5 card. And I'll show you this in a minute. So one thing about one of the main differences between a Lenormand reading and a tarot is I think the Lenormand is more precise. It gives incredibly detailed and exact results in the reading. It's got less symbolism, it's more a symbol, and it doesn't have the historical archetypal background that tarot has. The people who use Lenormand can be extremely protective over how to use it and about what is the correct way to do it. I think the tarot world is a bit freer and easier about how you use it. Lenormand, some older Lenormand readers can be very prescriptive. I think fortunately people are moving away from that, and as it should be, because I kind of think that the plethora of new tarot decks that have come out in the last 10, 15 years, many of them I don't feel work. They're very personal to them and just don't have that universality of the traditional tarot. And perhaps the energies of people that created them, although obviously they wanted to do tarot, why not, might be better directed at Lenormand, which I think lends itself more to people being creative with an image and putting their own stamp on it, because it doesn't have that tradition. You're not going to upset traditionalists like myself by doing something weird and wonderful, but that's by the by, each to their own on that. So the cards arrived. I thought, well, what am I going to do a reading on? And there was a subject which was preying on my mind from a long time ago, and you will see why, and why this is quite difficult to talk about. And I have to be a little bit careful protecting the identity of the other person in this one, so bear with me. Sometimes I stumble over things and have to correct myself. Hopefully I don't upset anybody, partly because there is a slight chance that the person I'm talking about could one day see this video, and I don't want to upset her in any way. So this incident, go back 1987, I'm 23 years old. I've spent a day in Vienna getting very hot and bothered, and decided to get on a night train to Venice, my next stop. So I got on the train early in a compartment, and this man came into the compartment and immediately threatened me, pinned me to the seats and threatened to kill me. I was absolutely exhausted. He was obviously drunk or crazy, and not a big man, but I was utterly exhausted, and I didn't feel that, one, I should put up a fight, or could put up a fight. So the journey went on. Eventually the train filled with people. He stopped his bad behaviour. I told one of my compartment companions what was happening. It turned out he was a young Italian farmer, Alberto, who chatted to the bloke, and eventually we got the train guard to chuck him off at the next stop, and I think it was a police escort. But I never reported it. I don't know why. I think at the back of my mind I thought this isn't going to happen. It was so unreal. And that's partly what makes this video quite difficult, because it's so unrelatable. It's the sort of thing that only happens in films, and even more so when I tell you the rest of the story. So a couple of years before that, I'd finished university, and I'd had, for me, quite a bad breakup, and was still quite upset, and hadn't I was still quite protective of myself, of not wanting to get hurt in a relationship again. And I think that was still always at the back of my mind. So anyway, Alberto got off the train, didn't even say goodbye, just disappeared. And as soon as I got off, I met this bunch of girls, younger than me. There was a girl called Becky and Fiona. And the girl I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to leave her name out and call her C and keep her anonymous for this. So immediately, one, she was extremely pretty, but also very forward, very, very friendly, very mature. She was only 19, and I was 23, and at that age gap seems enormous, because, you know, at 23 you've been through college or university, you've left, you've been doing other things. This girl is only just starting it. And you feel like that's a huge difference. I mean, it doesn't seem anything now. And getting talking to her, I discovered that she'd also, that night, had an incredibly traumatic experience too, of a similar threat. I won't go into detail, but both of us could share this experience, but didn't go into a lot of details, I think because it was still far too fresh. So we bonded over this for sure, and we spent only a couple of days in Venice. Now Venice, this was the end of the peak holiday season. It was the end of August, early September. It was still very warm, very humid, very hazy, very dreamlike. I was tired. I was probably hot and sweaty and self-conscious and traumatized by all this. So feelings were strange and heightened perhaps, but also subdued with the heat and the humidity and the tiredness. It's quite hard to describe really. But we had a lovely time and some moments together which even now are still really, really touch me. The background of Venice, and Venice at night, and being in a boat together, and just feeling very, very comfortable with this very beautiful girl. In fact, quite honestly, I felt part of the thing that inhibited me was, one, the to me still fairly recent breakup, and two, that I felt that she was out my depth. I was not going to get too far with this, but this is why I wanted to do the reading, because is that the case, and what happened. So we had arranged to meet afterwards. I had my plan, which I felt I had to stick to, which is strange really, why I couldn't suddenly change my plan, I don't know. You would think with this opportunity you would, but as I've explained, there are perhaps reasons for that. So we had arranged that I would meet her, or loosely arranged that I would, if I got to Florence next, which was my plan, I knew she was going to the youth hostel, I would try and see her, and if she's not there, leave a message on the notice board. And well, it didn't work to plan, so I did eventually go to the youth hostel a couple of days later in Florence. Didn't see any sign of her, and I left a message, and I don't think it ever got to her. I don't know whether she'd changed her plans slightly, or I'd missed her in some way, I don't know. And then the next plan was to, looking back at my diary, I'm not sure exactly about this, but I think we'd also said that if that didn't work, we'd meet in Rome, because I put into my diary that I'm waited on the steps of St. Peter's, hoping to meet her there, because I think we had a plan, and again, it didn't happen. So I never got her surname, and funnily enough, though, I did know where she was from, and it didn't mean a lot at the time, but I now live very close to where she was from. But having not known her surname, and time, it's nearly 30 years ago from the reading, I've never seen her again, never been in touch. I've no idea where she is or what her proper name is. So this fantastically intense moment and this bonding over shared trauma led to nothing, and we both moved on. So January 2018, 30 years from that meeting to this reading, and I'll show you the cards that came up. I used a 5-card spread or string. Let me just move the camera slightly to focus on the cards that we're concerned with. I'll remove the rest of them. These not the cards we need to see. Okay, 5-card string. Now, unlike tarot, where generally you'd read from left to right as you would read, and you have sort of background influences, past events, present, future, what ifs, and so on, it doesn't work quite like that. And I'll try and explain the best I can from my understanding of this. So we start from the centre and work outwards. And the centre card here is the woman, 29. Now, in the Lenormand pack, there are 2 cards for the woman, there are 2 cards for the man, and there are 2 cards for the lily. And I won't go into why that is. It's a bit speculative anyway. But this is the version of the woman that I drew. And let's look at the meaning for this. So with this 5-card string, this one covers the sort of what, how and why of a question. And the question I put to the cards was, what was going on those 2 days in Venice with C in 1987? How did she feel, and why didn't it work out? Okay, you could say, well, I kind of know that, and I've given clues as to why, but I just wanted the cards to give me some kind of clarity on this, and they sure did. I was absolutely blown away. In fact, you know, if I'd had any other cards, I don't think they would have been quite as accurate or perceptive as these particular 5 cards, or the way I read them. Now, before we go on to how you combine cards, you can also use the numbers of the cards, and Anna-K in the instructions emphasises you should try and memorise the numbers, though. So in this case, scythe 10. Don't just say scythe 10. Tree 5. Woman 29. Ring 25. Rider 1. So you try and remember the number with the name. So it's quite easy to look for patterns in numbers, but let's play this game anyway because it's interesting. So we've got a number 5, and I would say, well, there's a 5-year age gap between the 2 of us. Or you could say it's, where are we? 29 minus 10 equals 19 years. So 29 minus the 10 is 19 years old. Or 29 plus 1, so the woman and the man, is 30 years ago. The ring and the scythe could also be significant. I've got 30 here, so I think actually it's 29 and 1, 30. So we've been separated that long from when I did the reading. So this is the core card, the central one. So the core is a woman, and in this instance, clearly my love interest, if you like, and it represents a spinster, which surely she was, pulling in clouds to spin. Clouds are being sucked in to spin. Also, apparently this represents a feminine place. Well, yes, in that she was in the women's dorm at the hostel when we met. Or it's with female friends. It's a woman in a feminine place with women around her, and she was. These two other girls that she was travelling with at that time surely gave her a lot of comfort and protection and helped her to bond. So that's obviously C. So then we combine the core with the next card, which is the ring. This is called the shell, outside the core. These two are the shell. So this is one of the shells, the core and the ring. So that is obviously, there we've got the connection. It's a connection to this woman. It's an emotional attachment. And you can relate to the woman. Well, I certainly did relate to her trauma, and having lots in common with that woman and sharing experiences. Well, it couldn't be clearer. That's exactly what happened. I'm not adding that. That is the standard meaning for this combination. And also signifies that because the ring's there, that she's a reliable and a dependable woman. And also, rather tragically for us, it indicates that this is a connection that can continue forever. If it had worked, we were very compatible. And I think we were very compatible. She was about to study what I had studied at university. She was very mature for her age and very sensible and very open and friendly. And I think I would say I was very similar to that then, and hopefully now as well. So I would agree with that. I think we were very compatible, and I think in other circumstances, I think perhaps it really could have worked out. So the next part of this shell is from the core with the shell card, which is the woman with the tree. So the tree here is about roots, and usually about not being interested in travelling. Well, that's strange, but you could see why that could come up. Because at the time I remember, I've actually got this in my diary, she did say that she thought I should stay longer in Venice, which really was, she thought I should stay longer with her in Venice, and it kind of breaks my heart to think that now. And I don't know what I was thinking and how stupid that was of me to have this plan that I had to do the next thing in the stage when this fantastic opportunity was there. It could also be, the tree is also about focusing on bodily needs and about being inflexible. Well, surely I was being very inflexible about my itinerary. I had to do that, and I didn't really have to do that. It could also represent somebody who's quite down to earth, a woman who's down to earth and calm, and that is exactly what she was. Exactly, from my memory and my impressions and the few things that I did record in my diary, she was those things. And also somebody who doesn't obsess over their body, and she lacked vanity for sure, and yet she was incredibly beautiful. If I describe her, she was tall, fair-haired, big green eyes, really quite stunning, but not at all vain or playing on her looks at all. And also the tree has been there a long time. It's a very old olive tree, and this perhaps represents a long, long time, or perhaps all of one's life. So these two shell cards at the core really hit it home, don't they? Yeah. Right, so the next outer cards are the foundations in this type of spread. and it's what's behind these core issues. So we've got the tree and the scythe. So, well, the scythe is cutting through things, and it represents a too severe and an abrupt ending. And it only lasted 2 days, and that was it. And this was like a final goodbye. And it's this foundation, this is what this has preyed on my mind. This and not dealing with this trauma. It's just too severe, too sudden. And you will reap what you sow, is one of the meanings. And I did. I cut her off. It was self-inflicted. These are the standard meanings for this. It could also be the influence of an ex-partner or a fear of being hurt again. Again, this scythe and cut again. And that's so true. It was all too soon. And then we come to the outer foundations with the shell. So we've got the ring and the rider. And here we look at the dynamics of the rider. It's one of the few cards in the Lenormand, in this deck, where you see the face. I think there's only one other, which is the child. You usually see the back of people's heads. But here you see the face jumping towards you. So it's kind of this unfamiliar thing. It could be an attack. Well, both myself and C had been attacked in possibly the worst way you can imagine. And it could also be this kind of harassment. So it was a surprise to me, especially how quickly all this happened. Perhaps it was overwhelming. Me in a hurry with, again, my schedule. Not yet ready. Because something else, it usually represents something else has to happen or is to come. Well, it did. My life changed, and I'm happily married, and I don't dwell on this. It comes back to me occasionally, and obviously when these cards came, it came back, and these memories were renewed again. But yeah, I would like, if anybody does want to respond to this, if they see different things in these cards to the standard meanings which I've just presented, and a little bit of my interpretation. But if anybody sees anything different to this, or would like to add anything, please do share it, because it would be very, very interesting for other people to see that. I may not agree with you, but I may find that you've got a fresh insight into this. So that's it. I'm going to cut it fairly short because I don't want to go on for too long. I hope that's been of help, and I hope it, as I said at the beginning, I hope it's given people the confidence to take up Lenormand cards and have a go, because if I can do it, having not really ever used them before, I mean, that was my very first reading with a brand new pack of cards for a system which I was totally unfamiliar with, and to get a result like that, which couldn't have been more insightful in any way, really, is just incredible. I think, I think one of the key things which is shown in the cards, the scythe and the rider, really is that the whole thing was about this trauma, and that there was a sense of disappointment. I was disappointed in me. I'll probably never know, and this is why I wanted to see what these cards could, what light they could shine on this sense of disappointment. It certainly was a disappointment for me, and if she ever does see this reading, I just like to say, well, I'm sorry that it wasn't right at that time, and I had regrets immediately afterwards. But yeah, it just shows, something that's been suppressed for several decades can suddenly come to light, and this is one way of trying to deal with this. So that's it. That's if anybody wants to know a bit more about Lenormand, there aren't that many videos on it, so I would be prepared to, well, one, find out a bit more because I need to, and two, share anything else or give a little bit more detail than I've been able to do here. I'm going to bring this to an end. I've got to think about any other videos in the near future, hopefully not after 6 months. That's been ridiculous, and I do apologise. I don't really have anything special up my sleeve for tarot readings, but I may have a reading to do. I probably would do that. I'd probably share one because I don't have any new decks. Oh no, I do. I have the Botticelli Tarot, which I bought as a collector's deck, which I probably wouldn't actually use. It's quite pretty, and some people it'd be their thing, but it's not really mine. But it's a very pretty deck. So I haven't got any deck reviews to do, but I could do some readings. But please do comment and share, and I hope this is the kind of tarot reading or cartomancy reading which appeals, and if it is, then I would try and do a few more. Apologies for not putting my face in this one, but I thought I would just distract from the story, because it is an incredible story. I mean, it really is like something from a Hollywood movie, but with scenes of peril. And I hope it's informed and touched people. And on that note, I will say goodbye for now. Bye.